which is a theme I'll come back to and I think is something that was important in the success of our alliance there and with Michigan. So why not U of M? That's the question I would expect we were asking, and many people at Michigan asked that question, why not U of M? I think there were certainly some personality issues, but there was a bit of a why not U of M, sort of an entitlement mentality. You're nearby, we're nearby, how come we're not getting this money? How come it's going to MIT? Michigan at that time was fairly siloed. It was hard to work on more interdisciplinary things, very theoretical, and can't resist a football analogy, sort of inward looking, sort of, you know, as long as we win the Big Ten, nothing else matters. And I think Michigan also had a more parochial view. Well, the world's a bit bigger than that, and I think that's been one of the great transitions at Michigan, seeing things as beyond just the Big Ten or the Midwest or something nearby. So U of M, in a nutshell, was difficult to work with. Going back to MIT at this time, there were 10 other alliances founded that were the same size and magnitude, some even larger than the alliance with Ford. MIT was getting about 19% of its engineering research money from industry at that time. They claimed that was the highest in the nation, and of all the figures I've seen nothing to refute that. Fast forward about 5 years at MIT, of these 11 alliances, only one alliance, Ford, and one other company formally renewed, one partially renewed, and about 7 of them didn't renew. About 6 years after that, their industry money had gone down to less than 10%. Respectable, but certainly nowhere near best in class. And really this can only be classified as a failure. How can you start all these alliances and get all this money? You know, that's the hard part. Renewing them should have been the easier part, but they didn't renew. You know, why, what happened, what went wrong? So engaging in the time-honored practice of assigning blame, companies and universities both shared responsibility for this in different ways. The companies really did not assign dedicated personnel. These were really more hobbies for people. It was not on their performance review. It was not in their core objectives. And university culture is very different. You don't kind of pick this up on the fly on the side while you're really doing your day job. Also, the interactions in most companies were driven by executive personalities. Some exec, often an alum, would come in and say, we need to work with University X. And that exec would then get promoted, fired, something. And then the successor would walk in and say, why are we doing this? Where's this money going? How do you justify this? And there usually weren't good answers. There was actually a company, I won't name them, but you'd recognize them. They make big yellow equipment, so that narrows it down a bit. We had actually benchmarked them on how to work with universities. We didn't completely adopt their model, but it informed our thinking as we went into alliances. We thought they did a really good job. About 2 years after I was on the job, I got a call from a guy who introduced himself as my counterpart at this company and said, I was wondering if I could come up and maybe you could teach us the things that we taught you before, because they'd completely forgotten it. Out went the VP, they shut down their university work, which we thought at the time had been really best in class. So there's also a lack of implementation focus at companies. You know, if you start out with sort of unclear goals, you're going to end up with unclear results. You're not going to get these implemented. And the lack of viable metrics. Sometimes good things did happen, but how did you document that? And specifically at a company, big company like Ford and others, how do you document that in a way that the finance people understand that the investment is well spent? These are not trivial challenges. On the university side, I think universities came out with very unrealistic expectations about intellectual property, thinking there's a Gatorade under every rock or a warfarin that's going to be invented and, you know, shower money on the university. And they viewed tech transfer as really a profit center. There was really a poor understanding of what industry needed, and industry was always really, and will be, financially, the poor stepchild to government. I mean, even when MIT was getting 19% of their money from industry, the other 81 was coming from government, or most of that. Some universities treat you that way. Well, you're in the 19%, here's the 81, and you don't end up with good attention. This is something Michigan has done a fantastic job on, is growing to see industry money, though it will never equal government money in volume, as being different and of equal importance. So it can't be all about money. The universities, some of them really went after the companies. Some of them even adopted what we'll call a pay-to-play model. MIT had this. You come here, you pay $60,000 a year to the Industrial Liaison Program, and then they connect you with people at the university. That'd be sort of like a salesman walking up to you and saying, why don't you pay me 200 bucks and I'll come over and we'll have lunch that you'll pay for, and then I will tell you about the stuff I want to sell you. It doesn't work that way. Michigan really did not embrace that model, to their credit. And this model, I think, is one of the reasons why the attrition rate was so high at MIT. So now fast forward 5 years at Michigan, since the fateful decision to afford to do the alliance out at MIT. There was a great turnover in people, from Mary Sue Coleman as the new president, Ron Gabala and Dean Munson in engineering, Steve Forrest, Daryl coming in to lead the BEC. There was a complete change in attitude from this entitlement to, we want to be the best, we want to show the merit of what we're doing and earn the industry money and the industry partnerships. It was a complete change in attitude. There was an openness to learning from our experiences, good and bad, and working with us to evolve best practices. So Ford formally then founded the alliance with Michigan in May of 2006. We'd been working together for decades, but it was very sort of haphazard, tactical, many different groups, spending little bits of money in many different places at Michigan. And we made it a lot more strategic. We're tackling more important projects, and we've got executive involvement that will hopefully transcend the personality issues that have caused problems in the past with executives coming and going. Again, to use a football analogy, we have a number of VPs, and as one of them leaves, we try and bring in another one. Just like, so in Michigan football, everyone doesn't graduate at once, right? The seniors leave, and hopefully you've got some new freshmen coming in to keep the continuity going so the program can maintain its excellence, even though no one here now was here at the beginning. And that's really what we've seen with our alliances. So finally, even at Michigan, nothing's perfect. There's more work that needs to be done. I think the tenure system is something that still doesn't value industry work appropriately. It still values government work as being more valuable, more rigorous. I think there's a disturbingly high percentage of faculty at all major universities that have never spent any time in industry. High school, college, grad school, postdoc, faculty, crank, 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 on they go. That's unfortunate, because almost all of the graduate students and PhDs that come out of academia will in fact go to work in industry. You produce far more at a university than you can consume domestically as far as PhDs and engineers, and changing that to make the people, if not optimal, at least better suited to industry is something worthwhile. And I think this is something that Michigan's working on. So in conclusion, Ford and Michigan have always enjoyed a good relationship, but the alliance has really taken our partnership to a new level. Michigan has gone from being difficult and candidly below average as far as a partner to among the leaders, candidly to being the leader. There's no university that I think understands it better than Michigan, and we're now in the process of trying to get some of Michigan's best practices out to these other schools. So it's been great to watch this transition take place firsthand and answer any questions later. Daryl?
So thank you, Ed, and thank you all for coming today to come and hear a little bit about this topic of corporate relations in an academic setting. It's not often I get people who are too interested in this. I wake up every day worrying about this. If I go to parties or something with my wife, she's a veterinarian, and people ask what you do, and I'll say I do corporate relations. And they're like, oh, okay. And my wife, what do you do? You're a veterinarian. And then they spend the whole party talking to her. So I'm glad you'll listen to this for a few minutes anyhow. Let me get the clicker. I do have a presentation. So first I wanted to back up, kind of like Ed did too, and give a little quick history of kind of how corporate and academic interactions have evolved, particularly recently. But starting back post-World War II, as Ed alluded to, there really was a huge increase in federal funding for research at universities. And that really, developed this fantastic university system that we have in this country that has really, when all is said and done, led to the wealth generation in this country. And even back in the 1950s, then universities started, putting their toe in the water on this. Well, how do we interact with industry?